Today's lesson is on multiplying integers. So our objective is going to be able to multiply two or more integers. There is two rules for multiplying integers. If you have the same sign, meaning one is positive and the other is positive, or one is negative and the other is negative. If you have the same sign, you get a positive answer. If you have different signs, so a positive and a negative, or a negative and a positive, you get a negative answer. So when you are multiplying any two numbers or more than two, and you have the same signs, your answer will always be positive. If you have different signs, your answer is always going to be negative. Off to the side, you can create a tic-tac-toe chart that helps you with this. So if you create the tic-tac-toe chart, I always say the best way to get tic-tac-toe is 3 in a row this way. This just helps you set up the chart. So you put plus, plus, plus for positive, positive, positive. And then you fill in everything else with negatives. The way to read this chart is, there's your symbols. A positive, so let me highlight it for you. Positive times a negative equals a negative. Negative times a positive equals a negative. Negative times negative equals a positive. You can also read it upside down. So if you read it, or top to bottom, I should say, negative or positive times negative is negative. Negative times positive is negative. Negative times negative is positive. You can even read it backwards and from bottom up. So this just helps you figure out exactly what your symbol is going to be, if it's going to be positive or if it's going to be negative. So there is your chart. So give me your equal sign, okay? So you can just follow that chart if you want. You can always put that on any test, any quiz, homework, notes, whatever. So then you take a look at the problems and you say, okay, in number one, negative 8 times 4. So all I'm going to do is just do 8 times 4, which I know is 32. Then I'm going to come to my chart and I'm going to say, okay, well, a negative times a positive is a negative. So my answer for this one is going to be negative 32. Then I look at one like number 2. I have a negative 25 times a negative 3. Well, I know 25 times 3 is 75. And then I look at my chart again and it says a negative times negative is a positive. Okay. So I know my answer for this one is going to be a positive 75. Now I look at number 3. I say 9 times 6, 54. And then I look at my chart. Negative times positive, or I should say positive times negative is a negative. So different signs, negative answer. Same signs, positive answer. All you do is multiply your absolute values. So if you look at number 4, maybe you don't know what 33 times 8 is. Do your 6th grade garbage off to the side like I told you before. So 8 times 3 is 24, trade your 2. 8 times 3 is 24, plus 2 is 26. So I know my number, my answer is 264. Negative times positive is negative. Anytime you have an odd amount of negatives, your answer will always be negative. So here in number 5, I've got 1, 2, 3 negatives. So 3 different negatives there. So if I multiply the first two, negative 2 times negative 3, it's going to give me that positive 6, and then drop down my negative 5. And then I have positive 6 times negative 5, that gives me a negative 30. I know my answer is going to be negative because I have 1, 2, 3 negatives. That's an odd amount of negatives. So if you look up here in number 1, you had 1 negative. That's an odd number. If I have an even number of negatives, my answer will always be positive. So here I have 2 negatives, so my answer would be positive. The next problem does have an odd amount of negatives, so I know my answer automatically is going to be negative. But take it one piece at a time when you're doing this. So negative 7 times 5 gives you the negative 35. And then I'd like you to drop down the rest of your values. And then we get negative 35 times negative 9. And again, if you have to do your math off to the side, go ahead. But you should get a positive 315. Drop down your negative 5. positive 315 times negative 5 is negative 1,575. These parentheses that I'm using, anytime you have a number smacked up against another number with parentheses, it means multiplication. When we were seeing it like 35 plus negative 2, I ran out of space over there, that was addition because it had an operational symbol in between the value and the parentheses. All of these don't have any operational symbols in between the value and the parentheses. That means that it is going to be multiplication anytime they're just stuck to each other, like in this one here or this here. I have all these numbers stuck. There's no operational symbol in between. That means multiplication. So to recap, anytime you're multiplying integers, if they have the same sign, your answer is positive. If they have different signs, your answer is negative.